this program to you. A few weeks ago, we did one called Building Your Resume, and I thought it would be a great idea now to follow up with how to interview virtually. So just let me give you a brief synopsis of my background. I have been in human resources for many, many years. I'm what's called a generalist. I was a director of human resources for a bank. I heard you talk about the banks before,
Hmm.
and Vera. And I'm what's called a generalist, which means like my work encompassed everything: payroll, benefits, leadership development, training. But I also was responsible for all the recruiting in the bank that I worked for. So that's where I have a little bit of some experience in this regard. And I'm hoping that my experience, I can share it with all of you. So what I'd like to do is let's go back in time to, let's say, January 2020, okay? And when I was at the bank that I worked for, let's say that we had a number of customer service rep positions that we were looking to fill. So what would happen is we would put out the, I guess, the appropriate job description, and we would post it. We actually used ADP, was who we used not only for payroll, but for all our job postings. And little by little, people would apply. And we would go through the applications and the resumes, and I had an assistant, and she and we would select the best people that we felt were qualified for the job. And then what happens? We call them or we email them, and what do? We ask them to come into our office and meet with us one-on-one. Walk out into the lobby, say good morning, introduce yourself, bring them back into the office. There's always that nice firm handshake. You know, we sort of assess the way the candidate looks, and they sit in the chair opposite myself, and the interview begins. Well, as we know, the shift in the marketplace has changed the way we conduct our professional lives and the hiring process. So really, what is a virtual interview? And if you've never experienced one before, a virtual interview is an interview that takes place remotely using technology like video conferencing. Although the interviewer's questions are likely to be similar, right? That really doesn't change very much, all right? There will be differences between interviewing in person and viewing virtually. And for a prospective employee like yourself, trying to make a pitch about your career qualifications and sharing your brand narrative via a video conferencing can really feel a bit overwhelming. So if you're currently looking for a job, which I'm assuming most of you are, or if you're moving to the next step of your hiring process, what I'd like to do this morning is just share some best practices to help you ace your virtual interview and to get you set up for success. So I've got a number of tips, all right? And I also said to Lorraine before I continue, what I'd like to do, if you're interested, I have a lot of notes here, and I also have a lot of questions that I know that interviewers will ask. So I'm going to give you my email, and if you'd like a copy of my notes, I will be more than glad to send them out, okay? I'm going to ask you to take notes now, but I think it'd be a lot easier if I can forward them to you. So what I want to do right now is just give you some tips for how you can set yourself up for success during a virtual interview. So first of all, you need to position yourself in a well-lit, quiet, clean space. It's essential to use a quiet, well-lit, neutral area, right? Especially when you're talking to the recruiter, you don't want any type of distractions. You know, unlike interviewing in an office or a public space, virtual interviews actually provide a very intimate glimpse into your personal life, don't they? All right. Be sure to be sure to give a great first impression by keeping your area clean and limit any interruptions from family, friends, roommates, pets, whatever it might be. I just told Lorraine a story just a little while ago that I had read about, where an interviewer was interviewing a prospective employee, and all of a sudden they could hear a baby cry, and here the baby had kind of crawled over and was on the floor. And the poor person who was interviewing, of course, was a nervous wreck, all upset. She said, oh, this is going to blow it. But the recruiter was really outstanding, because she said, you know what, get that baby, pick her up, put her on your lap. So they talked about the baby for a few minutes, and at the end of the interview, the funny part of the story is the baby actually fell asleep. So the recruiter said, I guess I'm responsible for that. All right. I also, if you've noticed lately, and when you watch television today, and you look at, like, I'm going to say, the morning talk shows or the news shows, you'll see that so many news correspondents are working from home. And you ever really notice the space behind them? You know, some of them are beautiful flowers on a table, or, you know, nice well-lit area. But I also noticed, and I have to tell you, my sister has spent a lot of time with me here at my shore house this summer. We watch New Jersey news, and there's a weather forecaster, and we get the biggest kick out of his surroundings because you know what? They're always a mess. Do you know who I'm talking about? The pillows are a mess, the couch is a mess, there's stuff on the countertop. So we always, when we watch it at night, we just laugh about that. But you know what the problem is? It's distracting. It really, really is. All right. When we watch the news, we're so busy looking at what he's got in his house that we haven't heard what the weather will be for the next day. So truly, it is important that you have a well-lit, clean area. And if you can, okay, no distractions of any kind, right? The second item on my list is to test your technology, right? That last thing you want to do is have any type of breakdowns during a Zoom interview. It's important that your check your technology several times before the interview and again on the day of your interview to ensure success. Double check your Wi-Fi connection, camera, audio, everything. You know, being tech savvy is a skill that employers always look for. And by not doing your due diligence to ensure that you're good to go on the technology realm, you could have the interviewer or the hiring manager even question if you're the right candidate for the job. So please test your technology, all right? Number 3, and you would do this whether you were interviewing in person or whether you were interviewing via Zoom or whatever the situation is, you need to prepare thoroughly. And I think all of you know that. I think all of you have interviewed, you all know that. Just like an in-person interview, you should be ready to speak in depth about why you want to join the organization, how the company mission resonates with you, and the value you will bring to the role. If you remember, for those of you who may have been with me during the resume webinar, I talked a lot about you have to show what your value is to the company. My suggestion is always to actually practice your responses to potential interview questions. And like I said earlier, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some interview questions and then I will be more than glad to send my notes to you. You know, I found out recently in doing my research for this webinar is that a lot of employers, and they're doing it to save time, are actually sending lists of questions to potential candidates. And I found that they're doing that because maybe there's so many people that they want to speak to. You know, maybe they have 2 jobs and they've had 30 candidates. So the best way to do this is send out the questions and let the candidates go over them and they're prepared. But it's very quick though, right? It's really not the same, but they're doing that. But not all employers are doing that, but some are. So you may have the luxury of getting those interview questions before. But if not, right, you want to be prepared, right? If this is the case where you don't have the questions, all right, you want to plan ahead. Review the job description and prepare relevant examples of your achievement and experience. So when I talked about building a resume, I said you take the job description and you look for key components of the job and how it mirrors what you've done. And then when you build your resume, you're building it off that job description. Well, when you're building your interview questions, okay, that you want to rehearse and your responses to those questions, you're going to do the same thing, all right? A recruiter is going to want to hear what they want to hear. They want to hear about your experience as a customer service rep, your experience as a project manager, how you saved a company money, how you saved them time, whatever it might be. So those are the types of things you want to think about as you build those interview questions. I recommend that you take time to compile interview questions. And as I said again, I'm going to share with you some of those questions later, but you want to be able, via your responses, to show interest in the position and interest in the company. I will also tell you now, one of the things that has really been paramount for companies is making sure that their prospective employees know about the company's mission statement, know about the company's values. It's very important. So you're going to do your research on the company you're interviewing for. Do as much due diligence as you can. How long the company's been open, how many years, maybe even some of their executives, but you need to know what their mission is and what their core values are, because a lot of that nowadays, that's the best part about interviewing today is, you know, I'm going to date myself again. Years ago, we'd have to go and get a book or find a library to do some research on a company. Now all we have to do is put ABC company in our computer and there's the information we need. So prepare really well, right? Here's my 4th tip, and this one I feel so strongly about, and it's dressing appropriately, okay? Dress for success, sound familiar, and look the part. It would be unprofessional to come dressed in anything other than business casual. You know, if you were going to an interview, right, you would have probably a suit on, or right now I know the standards are a little bit lower and it's more like business casual, but it also makes you feel good inside, and you want to put your best foot forward, and you want to show the interviewer that you are serious about the job. And there's also personal benefits. People tend to feel more comfortable, confident, and competent when wearing business attire. Now, one of the things I think that's sort of been a phenomena in the news industry, if you've noticed, is that how many women, all right, are wearing sleeveless dresses, right? And I'm going to say low-cut dresses, and I can say this because we're all women, all right? And again, if you've got toned arms and a nice figure, that's fine, all right? But I find it really not professional when it comes to interviewing, okay? Not that I wouldn't hire somebody who had a sleeveless dress on, but you really need to think twice about what you're gonna wear, all right? So a white blouse, nothing too bright, nothing too colorful, okay? Because really what you want the interviewer to focus on is you and your history and your background and your experience, and not what you have on, okay? I was teasing Lorraine a few weeks ago when we talked about doing this, and I said I was going to call this webinar "Suit on the Top, Pajamas on the Bottom." Okay, so again, and I'll tell you a funny story. My daughter spent some time with me this summer, and she worked from home here with us, and every day she would actually get dressed up. It used to make me laugh. She had a jacket on, a suit on, and even heels on. And I said, "They're not going to see your feet." She says, "I don't care. I still feel better." So a little advice to all of you about dressing appropriately, okay? Use professional body language. Because interviewing via video limits the ability to communicate with body language, it's important to use body language in a clear, professional way. For example, if you get a question that is sort of unexpected, make sure to stay poised, take a moment, and collect your thoughts. We're always so worried when there's silence, aren't we? We always feel as though we have to fill the gap with words and everything. That's nothing wrong with that. When I've asked people questions, if they take a moment, I find that to be a very positive sign, because now I know they're thinking. They're thinking to themselves, let me make sure I answer this the way I want to answer it. Sit up straight and ensure your camera is placed in such that your face is in the middle of the screen, not too much blank space below or above. I did that opposite, didn't I? Below and above, below and above. And in most interviews, as you know, what do? You shake hands. Remember I said that earlier? You shake hands with your potential employer. But now you can't do that. So the way you're going to use your body language is through your smile, your expressions, okay? Good eye contact. Again, you notice you don't see them, but I use my hands when I talk, all right? Nothing wrong with that, all right? It just shows that you're engaged, and that's what's important. I can't tell you how many interviews I've conducted over the years where people have sat in their chairs slouched or not interested. I know it sounds hard to believe, but it's true. So you want to be right there, be focused, be attentive. Building rapport is my next tip. Very, very important to establish rapport in any business relationship. And that's exactly what this is. An interview is a business relationship. And again, you want to separate yourself from other candidates by building a personal connection. When you interview in person, let's go back to body language. There's no handshake, but that early small talk with the interviewer, nothing wrong with that. You might want to ask them, how has it been interviewing candidates virtually? Is it difficult? Are you not you, the company, successful? All right. And there's nothing, when I bring people into my office to interview, I always notice sometimes they were so very nervous. The first thing I'd say is, look, it's just a conversation between the two of us, and that's all an interview is. But again, your ideas are to make sure that you kind of separate yourself from everybody else, and you become that outstanding candidate that they want to hire. Be yourself. Very, very important. Be who you are. Let your personality shine through. In addition to showing your knowledge to the company and the role, it's crucial to open up and give insight into who you are as a person. Interviewers look to you to help them gauge to see if you're the right person for the role and an excellent culture addition for the organization. And we're going to talk about what a culture addition is in a little while when I talk a little bit about the kind of questions. Don't be afraid to leverage your soft body skills, all right? Language, interpersonal, communications, adaptability, right? And don't forget to ask the interviewer questions at the end, Very important. That's part of the rapport building business. All right. You might have something in common to forge a connection. You could even ask the interviewer how long they've been at the company, what they like about the company. So when you talk about building questions that you're going to rehearse to answer at the very end, you're also going to ask and put together some questions that you're going to want to ask the interviewer. Very, very important. And following up. I think you all know that. Show your interest immediately after your interview. Reach out to the interviewer by email to show how much you want the role and thank them for the time. Be sure to mention some of the items you discussed during your interview. It shows that you were engaged. And we'll talk about follow-up and emails at the end of my webinar presentation. But again, I'm going back to anything that you talked about, you have the luxury to write notes. And I will tell you, even during an in-person interview, I've never objected to having a candidate sit across me and say, Gail, may I take some notes? It's absolutely. But in your follow-up email, if there's something that you kind of talked a lot about when you talked about your customer service skills and how you were able to save the company money by answering questions so that people didn't have to call back again, you might want to highlight that again in your follow-up email. Because then, again, if an interview is interviewing a lot of people, you want to stand out. And that interviewer is going to say, oh, I remember. I talked to Mary about that. That's right. All right. So, again, it's all about standing out, all right, and career success. And again, the last thing is, how can I come across warm and personable during a video conference, right? It's really hard. It truly is. It's always good to smile, right? And use a lot of great eye contact, which I said before. Take your pauses and also try to connect on a personal level. Right now, a lot of companies are doing video interviewing. So you know what? Everyone is in the same boat. So you can talk about your personal experience about video interviewing right off the bat. All right. So I'm going to take a moment and ask, are there any questions or anything I hit upon that maybe you're concerned about or that I can reiterate? Yes, Vera.
So Gail, thank you, Gail. Great introduction. I had an interview 2 weeks ago with Nestle's, and it went very well. I didn't know how to really, set myself up for the interview, but I think I did well because they're passing me on to the hiring manager.
Good.
Can we talk about some icebreakers?
Sure, I guess we can.
How do we start the conversation off when we get onto the Zoom call with them?
Well, I'm going to go back a little bit to the mission statement of the company, all right?
Mm-hmm.
The core values or anything that might be listed on their website, Even like when you look at the mission statement for Dress for Success, you might want to talk about that, all right?
Okay.
You might want to, because right off the bat, you're letting that person know you've done your homework, all right? And you might even say something to the effect like, the bank I worked for, we had a phenomenal mission statement. And I always thought it was very impressive when people would kind of say, I noticed that, you had that in your mission statement. The company I worked for, we were very similar to that. Or in my volunteer activities, we mirrored ourselves to those definitions and so on. So, and sometimes, it's like I said, it's harder during a Zoom interview than it is in person because there's always that small, like I have to say, when I bring somebody into my office and I thought they lived far away, I said, do you have any trouble finding us? Well, you're not going to say that, or do you live close by? Have you always lived in the same town, So it's just a little bit of a small talk, just like we're doing right now. But I tend to recommend that you kind of do a little history on the company and let that sort of be your gauge, all right?
Okay.
Just from the beginning, okay? You want to let them know you've done your homework, I've years ago, and of course the bank I worked for was a very different bank. We were a Christian-based bank, and I know, quite unusual, I know. And I would say, did you do your homework about our organization? I always did that, and I will tell you that people who said, oh, no, why? I'm like, they really didn't get the job, okay? All right, but again, I know I'm not sure I'm answering your question exactly what you want to hear, but I always go back to what's there, and again, there's so much information, all right? Or you might even say, like I said a minute ago, very nice to meet you. So how long have you been with the company? What chose you? Why did you decide to work for Nestle? What was it? All right, you know what I mean? And a good interviewer, they'll share their thoughts and their feelings. They will. They will. Okay?
Okay. Yep.
Good. Any other questions?
I have one. What do you do when you have somebody start talking about politics as an icebreaker?
Uh, my opinion is don't
That's
share
like a
yours.
sledgehammer.
I know it is. That's unusual. Because it's sort of like we don't talk about religion and politics, and especially today, right? It's a shame, but I guess I would just sort of, if you nod your head and agree with them, then maybe they think you're aligned to their politics when deep down inside you may not be. They shouldn't do that. It's really, really inappropriate because, I'm not going to hire somebody because they support Joe Biden or they support Donald Trump. I'm going to hire somebody because they're qualified to do the job. Politics aside, that has nothing to do with it. Okay. Unless they're, applying for a position for a campaign or something like that. But I find that so inappropriate. I think I try to steer the conversation away if I could. You might just say, I know this is going to be a very difficult election year for this country, and I'm so anxious to hear about this company, and I'm so anxious to hear more about the job. Try to steer them away, okay? I don't know
I know it's a little problem because I'm a political science undergrad major. So, politics was my thing. So when somebody asks me, I can't, to shy away. It would be like almost odd if somebody asks me my opinion on it because that's on my resume.
Well,
So, I mean,
when you say on your resume,
you
political
gotta
science, but when you talk political science, it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean you're focused in on one group. Okay, you're not focused in on one political party. You're focused in, if I understand what political science major is, you're focused in on the whole, I'm going to say, realm of politics. Okay, all right. So again, I do think that question is inappropriate, but I can't speak for other recruiters. The best advice I can give you, okay, is to try to just steer it away. And you might even say, let me tell you why I decided to study political science. All right. And is there a reason why you decided to study political science?
because I like politics.
Okay. And the job that you're applying for, is it politically motivated?
No,
Okay.
but there's a lot of people who go into that kind of work who do like politics and are attracted to that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of thought he was sort of feeling me out, saying, where I would align. So I didn't know how to answer it. So I kind of gave, it's an interesting year. Be interesting to see what happens kind of answer.
Right.
Because I wasn't quite sure where to go with that.
I know.
Because, it was right the first thing. Boom. I was
That-
like, okay, just smack me in the face with that one.
Yeah, I would, yes, I agree with you. Again, I would do my best to steer. One question to you. Do you think that let's say who your political party is or who you've aligned yourself with would affect you getting this job?
I don't know.
All right.
Because you
That's
never know.
No, I know.
You never know.
And it is a different environment today.
It's a different environment. Old school people, they didn't really care. And old school people used to like discourse in politics and opposing views and that give and take and those little political arguments, not like we have now that,
No.
people want to kill each other.
No.
It was different.
Now you are. We'll go back at the end of this. If we have a few minutes, we'll go back to this. But again, a good interviewer, a good recruiter is going to interview you and make a decision on hiring you based on your qualifications. Okay. Like I said to you before, I worked for a Christian-based bank years ago, and the question used to come up, do you have to be Christian to work here? I said, no, you have to be qualified to work here. And that's the answer. Okay. So if we want to, we have time. If Lorraine lets us, we can go back to this. Okay. But my best advice is to steer away. Okay. All right. So what I want to do right now is share with all of you some interview questions. You're welcome to take some notes, of course, but I will be more than glad to send these questions out to you. I think they're going to be helpful. As much as an interviewer is going to ask you questions about your work background, your experience, and so on, there has been a shift over the past few years to what is known as behavioral interviewing, which in essence assesses the soft skills of candidates. hiring managers do not want to hire the wrong person. It becomes very expensive for the company, and of course, not only costs them money, but time. So what I did in preparing for this workshop is I actually spoke to six recruiters that I've known over the years, and I've asked them to share with me some of the soft skill questions that they ask and what they look for when they hire a successful candidate. And what I'd like to do is share this list with all of you because I feel it's going to be helpful to you. You already know that an interviewer is going to say, well, how long you've been with the company? 10 years. What did you do for them? Da, da, da. But now I want to share some questions with you that I want you to be prepared for, okay? And you're not taken back by. Again, they're called behavioral interviews, behavioral questions, right? So the first one, all right, and there's 6 components that I want to share with you. The first one is adaptability, which I guess, we all know that, right? Given that 54% of employees today may require significant reskilling or upskilling over the next few years to keep pace with the new technology that's evolving, businesses need people that are adaptable, all right? Employees who are adaptable are likely to achieve better outcomes. And here are some of the questions you may ask. And before I do that, let me just share a brief story with you. Again, I talk about the bank that I worked for. We were, even though a small community bank, we were very much aligned with technology and new resources. It's just amazing to me. It's one of the reasons I loved working for the company so much. And about 2 years ago, we decided to go to what's called a virtual teller. And I don't know if any of you have ever experienced that. Talk about virtual work, right? So you go up to a drive-up and you go and you either open the drawer, right, and you put your check in and they're going to cash it, or you put the check in the canister and off it goes into the pneumatic tube. Well, what we wanted to do is we wanted to be more available for our customers. So we actually went to what we call virtual tellers. So that meant when you pulled up to the drive up, there wasn't a person in the window looking at you and smiling at you or giving you dog biscuits, okay? What they had is a virtual teller right on the screen. And they were able to do every one of the transactions that you would have done for somebody in that window, all right? But the shift in technology and the fact that I had to have people that were adaptable to this was huge, right? And it took a lot of training and reassurances to these. So we took our drive-up tellers and actually brought them into the central operations unit. And believe it or not, everything they did was right from a computer. They were able to take the transaction, pass out the money. It was simply amazing, but it took a lot of hard work. But I was thrilled to know that we had hired people that were willing to make changes, willing to embrace this new technology. And what it did overall for the bank is save a tremendous amount of money, but it also gave our customers the opportunity to bank with us at 6 o'clock in the morning or at 8 o'clock at night. So that's the type of adaptability that employers are going to be looking for. And you know as well as I do, look what we're doing right now. Everything is going to change when it comes to technology. The changes are not going to go away, all right? That's for sure. So here's some of the questions that they may ask you when it comes to adaptability. Tell me about a time when you were asked to do something you had never done before. How did you react, right? Describe a situation in which you embraced a new system, process, technology, or idea that was a major departure from the old way of doing things. All right. And then another one would be, tell me about the biggest change you have had to deal with. And it doesn't necessarily mean work-wise either. All right. Don't always think that some of these questions are always geared to your employment. They could be life. I moved from New York to California. I moved from a small apartment to a big house. If it was a big change in your life, then talk about it. All right. We're just looking to see that you're someone who's adaptable and you can deal with change. And we all know change is very difficult, isn't it? It really is. But in today, 2020, look in the past, 9 months, look at the changes that we've had to process, right? Culture. Recruiters will be looking for candidates that will be aligned with the company's mission and core values. Now, that doesn't mean that they want to hire everybody that looks like or acts like, okay? Today, hiring managers look for what they call culture add, which is what I said before. Someone who doesn't just fit in, but will help the company evolve and grow, right? So they don't want carbon copies. They don't want iRobots. They want all unique, different people, but they want to know, again, that you're going to align yourself to the mission of the company, but you're also going to bring your own perspective, okay? You're going to kind of do your own thing, but it's going to be in alignment with the company. So to find out if a candidate is a culture fit, these are the types of questions that you may be asked. What are three things that are most important to you in a job? What's the most interesting thing about you that's not on your resume? And the other would be, what would make you choose our company over others? Okay, those are three questions that you might be asked when it comes to culture fit. All right, collaboration. That's an easy one, all right? All companies want to know, and you want to know too, as a prospective employee, what is it like to work in this company? What are the collaborative skills? What do I have to bring to the table, right? We all know the importance of working well with others. So you might be asked something, give me an example of when you had to work with someone who was difficult to get along with. How did you handle it? Now, you don't want to be overly negative, all right? You never want to, I've had people say, oh, the company I work for, the manager I work for, or anything like that. You always want to be positive in your responses, but we've all come across people that we've had difficulty working with. So think about this when you start to, write down your responses, because you may be asked this question. Tell me about one of your favorite experiences working with a team and the contributions you made. I think we've all had moments where we worked with a team and it was great. It was just like the best experience ever, right? But again, it does not have to be work related. It could be related to volunteer activity. It could be related to a church function, okay? I always say some of my best times was working with, I have a ladies group at my church, and we've had just the best opportunities over the years. We've had lots of fun. So you can answer on a personal level as well. All right, and this is one question I'm going to tell you I always ask, and most recruiters do as well. They're going to ask you, describe the best supervisor you've worked with. What part of their management style appealed to you? And I'm going to tell you why. Because I want to know, and most recruiters know, if you're a recruiter from a large company, they know who their managers are, they know their disciplines, they know their style, all right? So I want to make sure that I'm selecting candidates to send off for second interviews that I feel can work well with those managers, all right? I have a manager who was very hands-on, always, so if I'm interviewing someone and someone says to me, well, I'd like to take direction and I like working with somebody, I like to be close with them, I think to myself, okay, this would be a good fit. I've had other managers that are like, here's the job, go do it. So when someone says to me, oh, well, I love to work independently, I'm like, okay, that could be a good fit for this manager. So this is a big question I believe you're going to be asked. They're going to ask you your best manager, your best supervisor, and what was it about them that you liked working for them, right? Now, leadership, right? Even if you're not interviewing for a manager or supervisor role, hiring managers will always look for people who can inspire and motivate. Whenever I interview candidates, I always look for a candidate's leadership potential. For example, tell me about a time when you led by example. I think we've all done that in our lives at one time or another. Have you had to make any tough decisions lately? Would you mind sharing? And have you ever had to persuade someone to see things your way? Those are three questions that you could possibly be asked in terms of them trying to identify what your leadership potential is. And I do believe that most of us who go into jobs really are looking to grow in that job. We always start here, but we want more, all right? So we want to evaluate what kind of potential we have and what we can bring to the table, all right? And again, are leaders born or are they made? They're made. So this is a good opportunity for you as the candidate to ask those kind of questions. So you can ask like, do you offer any type of supervisory skills seminars or workshops? Or what can I do? What can I learn more so that I could advance in this company? These are all good questions that will give you the opportunity to ask good questions as well, all right? Growth potential. Companies will always be looking for someone who can develop the role they are hiring for and make it their own. Okay, that's the best thing. I love it when I hire somebody and then maybe 6 months later, a manager would say to me, Gail, this person's just outstanding. They're doing the job, but they're doing more, right? Yes, they're doing every day, they're doing their customer service skills, but boy, they're following through. They're always asking, what can I do? What can I do more? Most of you are all, I know for a fact, I don't think there's anybody I'm talking to this morning that's not looking to do more and advance in their careers, right? We don't want to stay stagnant. We want to grow. Here are some questions. Describe a time when you volunteered to expand your knowledge at work as opposed to being directed to do so. I'm sure each and every one of you, hopefully at some point, has said to a manager you've worked for, what else can I do? I'm done with my work today. Can I do something else? When was the last time you asked for feedback from a supervisor? Have any of you ever done that? All right. Okay, good. That's good to know. That's very, very important. As a matter of fact, I'm working on a program about performance evaluations. And in talking to some of the people that I'm working with on this program, we talked a lot about it's not a one-way street. It's not the manager just telling you what kind of associate you are, the work you've done. You as an associate have a vital role to get feedback from your manager. Most companies have like a 3-month evaluation period. And when I talk about that with like during, let's say, employee orientation, they get nervous. I said, no, this is a good opportunity. The manager's going to tell you what you've done in the past 3 months, but now this is your chance to find out, what do I need to do to get better, improve? Am I doing what you want me to do? What else can I do for you? All right. So this is a question that a manager, a recruiting manager may ask you. When was the last time you asked for feedback? And what's the biggest career goal you've ever achieved? Okay. Think about that. All right. Whatever it is, as far as you're concerned, if it's important to you, then we want to hear it as recruiters. All right. And then someone say this or me, how do you prioritize? Okay. Hiring managers look for employees who can manage their time effectively and pay close attention to details to ensure that things do not fall through the cracks. All right. They're going to ask that. All right. Do you do a to-do list? Is it in your head? How do you make a priority? Okay. And of course, I will say too, one of the things that you might want to ask a recruiter is, all right, when I'm in this job, all right, will my manager share with me, what are the number one items that I have to work on? And that's even a question that if you get to the second level where you're meeting with the hiring manager, all right, you might want to say to them, how do you want me to prioritize things? If I get this job, what's important? What do I need to know? Okay, so they may ask you that question, but this is a good question we can turn around and that you could ask them as well. All right. Here's some questions. Tell me about a time when you had to juggle several projects at the same time. Okay. I think, especially how many of us have been juggling many things in the past 6 months, haven't we? All right. Have you ever planned your own project? And if you did, how did you organize and schedule your task? Okay. All right. So now, those are the items that I think are most important, okay, as part of behavioral interviewing. And what I want to do, I just want to share some questions that you might want to ask the recruiters, okay? So one of the ones that I think that I always like to hear is, what's the biggest opportunity for this position? All right, very important. And then you might want to ask, what do you think is the most challenging aspect of it? All right. And if you're a good recruiter and you know the company you're working for, like I said, I worked for a smaller company, so I knew all my hiring managers. I knew their good points and their bad points. I knew what they were looking for. But if you are a good HR person, you're going to know this. And so you want to get these answers ahead of time. What type of person works well with this team? All right. Very, very good question for you to ask. And then the other question is, how did your company determine its mission? And I will tell you, there aren't companies out there today that really don't have culture statements or mission statements or values, right? That's one of the things that's setting companies aside. And I talked a little bit earlier about the bank I worked for, and prior to the changes that we experienced last year with the bank I worked for, we had spent close to a year with an actual consultant developing our core values, our mission strategy. It's like, when you think about it, all our senior management team got together and worked very diligently. And then we rolled it out to all our people. It was a really inspiring time for our company when we did that. So I will tell you, most companies who have mission statements, they feel very strongly about that and they value that. So you want to talk about that with the prospective employer that you're interviewing with. Okay. All right. I'm going to stop here before I go to follow-up emails. Are there any questions? And again, as promised, if you send, I'll give you my email address and I will be more than glad to send these notes out to all of you, okay? And I will tell you, you can actually Google behavioral interviewing. And like I said, I actually talked to 6 of my closest recruiters, but you can actually Google this information and there'll be a list of questions out there that you can work with, okay? So just like you built your resume, you're gonna build your questions for your interview, especially a Zoom interview. Okay, well, if there's no more questions, all right, what are we going to do? And I will say, years ago, I'd interview somebody and a couple of days later, I'd get a note card in the mail, okay? And somebody would send a personal note. and they thanked me for the interview. And over the years, I've had candy sent my way, flowers sent my way, cookies sent my way with the thing. I know it sounds funny, all right, but I have, all right. That was just their way of thanking me for the interview. But I think most importantly, being recognized, okay, and being a standout. Oh, I remember her. She sent me the cookies, okay, for the interview. But nowadays, it's so easy. And I'm going to recommend that you send that email out to that recruiter as soon as possible, okay? If you want to give it a day to kind of think about your responses and how you want to structure it, that's fine, but no sooner than one day, all right? So one of the emails you're going to send will be to the interviewer who immediately interviewed you, okay? And if you have an opportunity for the second round, you'll also send an email to the hiring manager, okay? There's always an opportunity, hopefully not a second email would be a follow-up interview. And one thing that I always distresses me for all these years I've been in business is when interviewers don't get back to people. And all of you are going to shake your heads like this, because how many of you have taken interviews and not heard back? Okay. And one of the things that the minute I got into this business a number of years ago, one of the things I promised is that for everybody I spoke to, they would hear back from me. Okay. Everybody has a right to know, do I have this job or opportunity or not? All right. But it doesn't hurt to send a second. If you haven't heard anything after the first email, you can send a second. All right. And then the last case scenario, and hopefully we don't go that far. Sometimes you don't hear anything. Well, then what you want to do is you want to send a third email and you just want to say, I'm still interested if you are in the position and I'd like to know where I stand. Okay. Well, what I want to do is I just want to take that first email and just give you some pointers, and very simple, right? It doesn't have to be lengthy, but you want to start by choosing the right subject line. All right. So you're going to say, to Gail Tilstra, ABC Company. And on the subject line, thank you for your time. Thank you for the opportunity. Just following up regarding the customer service position. Okay. Always open your first paragraph with thank you. All right. And mention the specific job title and thank your interviewer for the time and express your continued interest in the job and company. Again, if you're interested. Talk about your interests, goals, and experience. In your second paragraph of your email, all right, you're going to put the company's name as well as a conversation point, which we talked about before, and or a goal that seemed especially important to this person you spoke with. So if you notice that during the interview, they were constantly talking about the need to have technical skills for this project manager position, you want to hone in on that. Right. I believe that I have the technical skills ABC Company's looking for, and that I would be an excellent project manager for you. Okay. You want to get as specific as possible while keeping it short and to the point. Okay. Very important. And think about everything you talked about. And again, in a virtual interview, you can take as many notes as you want to. You want to set yourself apart from other candidates. In the final paragraph, close with a summary statement as to what sets you apart from any other candidate and what you're going to bring to this new opportunity. And I know this is going to take a few minutes to think about, all right? Not easy to just, but always have your responses somewhat ready, okay? I feel that my years of service at CDE Company will prepare me for this opportunity. I've been able to save money. I've been able to manage staff effectively. Make yourself stand out, all right? And then in your email, you can actually say if you need any information about me or if you want to follow up, invite the recruiter to ask you any additional questions and close by saying you're looking forward to hearing back. Okay, very important. I had an email here that a recruiter had sent me that's what was so good. I'm just going to share it with you in closing, right? It said, Dear Mrs. Smith, thank you for taking the time to speak with me about the marketing coordinator role. It was great to meet with you and learn more about the position. I'm very excited about the opportunity to join Horizon Marketing, and I'm particularly interested in the details you shared about the upcoming launch of the brand campaign, okay? So they must have focused a lot of time and effort on that. That's why she's